Let me tell you a story. About 6 or 7 years ago, I was living in northern Afghanistan, and I was on my way driving through the countryside to visit a project site. It was a beautiful blue sky, sunny winter day, and I was just enjoying the landscape, driving through the hills of northern Afghanistan, when suddenly we came around the corner and the road was blocked. Dozens of cars were parked on both lanes of the highway and spilled out onto the shoulder. So my driver got out and went to see what was up. And he came back and said, "There's a military block in the road. It's Americans. Nobody knows what's going on." Well, shoot, that's not good. I pulled out my cell phone, planned to call the security office, see what was up. No reception. I pull out my satellite phone, and of course, no signal. So, what do? Clearly, just sitting there was not an option. Not knowing what was going on, also not an option. I got out of the car and worked my way through the crowd of dozens of Afghan men and their cars parked all higgledy-piggledy in the road. I got to the front of the line, and I could see about 50 meters away an American soldier. I waved to him to grab his attention and pulled out my NATO ID, held it up so he could see through his binoculars who I was. And he waved me over, and I went feeling all the eyes of the people behind me staring, watching. Turns out there wasn't a problem. Just a big truck had slipped on the ice on the road, and they were using military vehicles to help set it right. So no security threat, no problem. The roadblock, just a normal precaution. Should be on your way in 15, 20 minutes. Have a nice day, ma'am. All right, fair enough. I turn around and head back to the car. And out of all those dozens of Afghan men who had been milling around and chatting to each other, had become a wall, a silent, staring wall of turbans, beards, and Afghan winter cloaks. And as I'm walking back those 50 long meters, my mind was racing through contingencies. Oh, crap, they know my car. They know now that there's a foreigner in the car, and they've seen me talking to the American. They think I'm with the Americans. What do? Should I stay here with the military until this is over? Should I drive back to the city? And would it even matter? Because they could, if there was anybody in this crowd who would want to do a foreigner harm, they could call ahead and send somebody, to pick us up. What do? About 5 meters before the line, I got even more nervous. I realized they're not moving. Normally in Afghan culture, you would avoid body contact, physical contact with a female. So they would make a hole. They would let me pass. Nobody was moving an inch. So I stopped. And 5 meters away, all these eyes staring at me in silence. And then out of that awkward silence came one rough voice saying, "Chi guft?" Which means, "What do you say?" Oh. They just want to know when they can drive again. They don't care about me. They don't care that I'm a foreigner. They've been standing around in the cold, not knowing what's going on, nobody telling them anything, also maybe worrying if there's a threat that they should know about, if they should be turning back. And the one person who's finally been able to get some information without getting shot is just standing there like an idiot, staring at them, not saying anything. So I told them in my stumbling Dari what was up, and that was it. "Oh, Bakhoda, oh God, yeah, these trucks, man. And they all scattered, and nobody paid 5 seconds attention to me anymore. All of that worry, all of that stress, I was having my Lawrence of Afghanistan moment. And the one obvious explanation to their behavior, the human, simplest explanation, was the one that never occurred to me. In that moment, I dehumanized every one of them. And, with my international background, and you might think, I even maybe thought I'm like Captain Intercultural. And there I was, dehumanizing these people who just wanted, like anyone else, to get out of a traffic jam and get on their way. And now this is just maybe a funny story. No harm done, right? But that dehumanization, that can cause real damage, and really it has caused real damage in our everyday life, in how we deal with each other, and in our society, and how we got where we are today. It's that dehumanization that led many Afghan civilians and Iraqi civilians to die at the hands of US military, who out of fear shot first and asked questions later, because these people look scary. It's this dehumanization that leads police officers in the United States to shoot unarmed black people because they look threatening. It's this dehumanization that causes people in our communities to say, either behind their hand or in public, I don't want foreigners or refugees in my neighborhood because crime will probably go up then. And that everyday personal level dehumanization, it also creeps into our institutions. It's the dehumanization that brought us an aid industry that treats the people we're ostensibly trying to help like some kind of second-class citizens. It's the dehumanization that turns the question of whether or not it's okay to let people drown in the sea when we could do something into a legitimate political debate. And it's the dehumanization that when we see people in our community who have genuine fears and struggles, economically and socially, and we say, you should think like us. Why are you so closed-minded and racist? Get with the times, instead of listening and having a human conversation as equals about their fears and where they may be coming from. So, what can we do about this? Well, I've given it a lot of thought. I've come to a conclusion, and it is as simple and obvious as it is elusive. Empathy. Strategic empathy. And what do I mean by strategic empathy? What does that mean? It means recognizing empathy not as some moral virtue to be aspired to, but as something smart, something that makes sense. It's recognizing that strategy grounded in humanity will always be better if you deal with humans. So, empathy is not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. When you operate with empathy, whether in your personal life or your professional interactions, whether you're dealing with a partner or someone you might consider an adversary, if you try to put yourself in their shoes, you're going to understand the problem better, you're going to be able to anticipate their behavior better, create incentives that they can actually, accept. And by the way, this is not rocket science. I mean, the private sector has figured this out long ago. They have another name for it. It's called marketing. It's called human-centered design now, even. Design thinking, putting the person in the middle, trying to put yourself in the shoes of your customer. The fact that the private sector has figured this out and the public and nonprofit sectors not so much also can explain why it's easier to find a Coke or a Fanta in most countries than it is to get potable running water in your house. So we have a lot to learn. And now some of you might be thinking, well, that's great, Jess, but what does that have to do with me? I'm not a politician. I don't work on any of this stuff. Even if I care in theory, what can I do in practice? How can anything I do possibly matter? Well, for that, I can tell you, sorry, you're not off the hook. There is something you can do. Every person who practices empathy is sending ripple effects into the world. What you do, and above all, how you treat people, changes their lives. And when you've changed someone's life, you have no idea what's going to come out of that. I can tell you, as a woman, as a person of color, I experience microaggressions and sometimes the occasional macroaggression all the time in my daily life, in my work. And I'm kind of used to it, it's always been there. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean that it doesn't chip away at my energy. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exhaust me and make me pessimistic about how we've evolved as a society and a species. But I can tell you, every time anybody speaks up, steps up for me or someone else who's being discriminated against, with a word, with even just a frown at someone who's being a jerk, and a little smile to me that says, hey, this sucks for you. I recognize your pain. I recognize that this guy's being a jerk, but I'm on your side. That makes you feel 10 feet tall. It wipes away all the dozens of microaggressions and bullshit that you might have experienced in the last weeks or months. It just wipes the slate and gives you the energy and the strength again to say, hey, I can keep doing this, and we are more. When I think about the last few years, sometimes I just have to ask myself, how on earth did we get here? I'm half German, half American. I've lived and worked all over the world, and I can tell you, as both a European, a German, and an American, between Brexit, AfD, and Trump, it's just been exhausting. and it's given me a lot of food for thought. I think about all the hope of the Obama years. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. And the chill that went up my spine, the goosebumps we gave each other with this phrase. And I've realized there is a subtle loophole, a fundamental flaw in yes, we can, that we didn't see, and explains everything about how we got here, about how we went in the space of what felt like one evening from the liberal world order to the autocratic nationalistic clusterfuck. This didn't happen in one night. It had been building up all along, because collective action is just as powerful as collective inaction. And the collective inaction occurred because before yes, we can, we forgot that there's something that comes first. Before yes, we can mean anything, we first, each and every one of us, silently to ourselves, first has to say, yes, I will. No matter what anyone else around me is doing, even if no one else is standing up. Yes, I will do what I can to make a difference in the lives of the people around me. Yes, I will, at least even if I don't understand other people, I will recognize the humanity in them, and I will recognize and accept as a fundamental fact of reality that their world is just as real and complex as mine, and their pain and their aspirations and their hopes and their dreams are just as human as mine. Today is my grandfather's, Today is my opa's 95th birthday. My opa, my grandfather, was born in 1923. When he was 10 years old, Hitler came to power. He never joined the Nazi Party. He was never in the Hitlerjugend. And by the time he was 20 years old, he was fighting on the Russian front. My promise to him, to all of you, yes, I will do whatever I can to make sure that no child is born into a world that teaches them to hate. Yes, I will do whatever I can to make sure no one has their hopes and dreams and humanity stripped from them, who has to experience the horrors and the hopelessness that my grandfather and all of our grandparents lived through in whatever part of the world they are from. Yes, I will give my time and my energy in my everyday interactions and in my work to make this world, as corny as it sounds, a better place. My way of doing this was quitting a 6-figure career in international development and foreign policy to try to find a better way to solve the challenges of our time and to build the partnerships for the future that we need to make the world a better place. None of you needs to quit your job to be able to say you committed to yes, I will. This was my peace. This is my promise to my family and to all my friends around the world who have suffered like they had. Find your peace. Promise it to yourself. Carry it with you and live it every day. And even if on one day you let it slip, pick it up on the next day. Every time, every interaction makes ripples of humanity that will spread around the world. And if enough of us have done this, if enough of us say, yes, I will, then someday, inshallah, we will be able to say, not just yes, we can, but yes, we did. Thank you.